What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight. Today, I have a longtime friend, a Hamptonian like myself, Matthew Griffin. He is going to be with me today. This is a very, very special show because in shows past, we normally talk about the legacy of the person I'm interviewing, and we talk about all the different things they've overcome and accomplished in their legacy. But this Legacy Spotlight, Matthew and I are going to discuss a phenomenal individual and player, a great legend by the name of Eric Hunter. He tragically was taken from us, and we're going to talk about his life he lived and all the different things he did on and off the field and give a true perspective on what he meant to people and what he meant to not just the Hampton High football legacy and basketball program, but also to sports, you know. And just before I get into talking to Matthew, I met Eric Hunter. I was a middle schooler when he was winning championships in football and basketball in Hampton. Years later, when I was a junior at Hampton High, he came back and he was one of Coach Brower's assistant basketball coaches. And I remember being in awe of him. But we're going to talk about it. Matthew, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fine, Vic, and yourself?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to finally get this going, man. We posted about it, man. We got so many likes and comments and interest. And I remember talking to you years ago as you were building up and getting ready to do his documentary. And I was so intrigued by that because Eric Hunter is just a phenomenal player. He was just a great player. And he was one of those guys you almost wish you had social media that we have now with Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, because what he did on the football field, his intensity, the athlete he was, you and I both can agree sometimes he doesn't get the respect. But before we talk about his accomplishments, your documentary, let's talk about your drive and your interest to do a documentary on Eric Hunter, because I'm older than you.
You got me by about a good 6.
And I played in from 90 to 94, a few years after Eric left. And I didn't play with him, but I saw him play. You know, usually guys your age or younger, they may know about somebody, but might not be as passionate. Case in point, your age group was during the Ronald Curry era, right?
Yeah, definitely. Ron and Marcus Higgins.
Yeah, Biscuit. And Biscuit's been on the Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight, and he's a longtime friend. He's my little brother, so I love him to death. And he's another guy, a great one. But what drove you why are you so passionate about Eric Hunter?
Okay, well, to understand the reason why I did the documentary, to give you a quick background about myself, going through a lot of things myself, middle school, high school, and I developed a passion to speak for those who don't have a voice. Those who may have gone through things such as I did and may have fell by the wayside, but nobody was really there to pick them up. And I feel like it was my God-given gift to bring the real reality, that people really go through behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. So Eric was somebody I looked up to back in like 80. I can remember watching Eric play, like 86, 87, mm-hmm. And just being a Hamptonian, growing up on Shell Road my whole life, and my whole family went to Hampton. You know what I'm saying? You got to be a crowd, but that's just what it is. You know mm-hmm. what I'm saying? And your mom, your aunt, your uncles, they all went to Hampton. So it was like, Eric just stood out. He was that guy. And, and even back in high school, he like 6'5", 230. That was unheard of. You know what I'm saying? That was just, it was like, he that guy. But getting back to, the documentary, seeing what Eric went through after football and other guys after, there's an Eric Hunter in every community throughout the world. There's an Eric Hunter everywhere. Mm-hmm. And seeing what he went through, the mental health issues, the drug situations, I just feel like people like himself, sometimes when they fall by the wayside, the black eye on the community is we don't really pick them back up the way we praised them when they was already up. Mm-hmm. And I believe that Eric hit a broken heart. When you come from the circumstances that most African Americans come from, African American black males come from, And when you have that gift and that ability, everybody's dependent on you. And then for it to be kind of like snatched from under you, that can really do something to you psychologically. Especially when you pretty much know you're going to the NFL. And if you watch the documentary, Felicia, his sister, talked about how Eric will call the house and was like, "Mom, start looking for your home," because he knew he was going. You know what I mean? And for him to have that snatched, and not just anybody. If I play football with you, and and I see you going down that path, I'm gonna try to help you. Too often in our community, we see people with mental health problems who may have a lot of potential and may be very talented, but we will use them for that and throw them right back to the wolves. Once we get what we want, we put them back out there, knowing that they need our help. You know what I mean? And I just see that growing up, too much growing up on Cheryl. I've seen so many people that had so much talent and were so gifted, just fall by the wayside. And I would see Eric and I would just be in awe, because even though it'd be times we'd be out playing street football, he would just be, walking up and down the street, whatever. He'd take the ball. He would just, just the way he would just even when he was at his worst, he still had this God-given gift.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that alone made me say, you know what? Someday in my life, I'm going to honor him. If nobody else does it, if everybody forgets, I haven't forgotten. And unfortunately, the reason why it took his death for me to actually do the documentary, because it wasn't really an ending to it. And he wasn't really in the state where, mentally, where I could really, sit down and really have a heart-to-heart.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, when I found out he got killed, it was extremely heartbreaking for one. But at the same time, it was like, you know what, this starts his legacy.
No question. So Matt, tell everybody, because for those that watch this, unfortunately, you have some people, you mentioned his sister and his family and those that appeared on your documentary, they're aware of what happened. But in the day and age now, with so much media, we're saturated with so much breaking news. And for those that may not live in the 757 anymore or keep up, let me allow you to let people know, what was his mental health diagnosis, if you're privileged to know, and also what was the reason, or what exactly happened with his tragic death?
Okay, well, that's a loaded question. So I'm gonna start with his diagnosis.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was bipolar, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna give you what his family told me they believe.
That's what I want. That's what we need.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
family. No speculation. Because you
Got
talked to his family.
Yes. They believe things came from a concussion, for untreated concussions. And that kind of led to what happened, and going, downhill with his mental health. And, you look at Aaron Hernandez and people like that, and you talk about the concussions, and Junior Seau, perfect example, and what happened to him. It kind of makes you really, really look into that. Like, man, was it really concussions that really caused, that breakdown? It really, and maybe only God only knows, but it's definitely a possibility. Definitely a possibility.
And when did he pass away? What happened? Because I remember getting all the articles shared, but I'll be honest with you, I just know that it was controversy surrounding his death. What exactly are you aware of, you and his family? What did you guys know?
Eric was murdered July, I believe the death certificate said July 6, 2017 was the official date and time. And he was shot multiple times. They didn't say how many, but he was shot multiple times. Unfortunately, still no one has been apprehended for it. Another tragedy in our community. So that was, he died, through gunshots.
Yeah, hearing you say it and just thinking about growing up, because I'm from Shell Road too, and you and I both know about the 757, not just Shell Road, but Eastern Newport News, across the water, Norfolk, and Newport News. In Portsmouth and places like that. There's so many stories, as you eloquently mentioned. There are a lot of Eric Hunters where talent and pride and excellence is at the forefront when they're playing, but when it's over, there's no transitional plan. A lot of times, a lot of young men and even some women are left hanging, especially in the Black community. Eric Hunter, when you talk about him, he is right there with the Tyrod Taylors, the Aaron Brooks, the Michael Vicks, the Allen Iversons, because Eric Hunter was the parade All-American. He was MVP of the Senior Bowl when he got to getting ready for the NFL. He was the Big Ten, help me out, the Big Ten Rookie of the Year.
Freshman of the year,
Rookie of the Year, yeah.
Only playing the last 4 games.
Yeah, came in.
The last 4 games.
Yeah, only played 4 games. And I remember being in Hampton, being in school when he took over, and everyone knew back home Eric Hunter was going to take over the game. And the same way you see Brady yelling at his offensive lineman, Eric Hunter was the same way.
Man.
In high school, hold on. I just want to say this because I just remember in high school, he won a state championship for the legendary Hall of Fame coach Brower, and he also won a state championship for the legendary Mike Smith. Actually, he won 2 for Coach Smith, didn't he?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I believe it was 2.
And we can go
I know
on.
No. They went to the state against TC Williams. I believe that was the year he threw that interception.
Yes.
And then he came back, I think, and played Robinson. I think it was at Todd Stadium because I think it snowed real bad.
It was cold. I was at that game. It was
like 88. Yeah, they had won. But I think the year prior to that, they had won against TC Williams, and then they came back, lost, and they won again. I believe against Robinson.
Yeah. He was. It's not enough footage on him. It's just not enough knowledge. That's why I wanted to do this legacy spotlight. But you were going to talk about his career, just some of the things you wanted to highlight, just from an athletic standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I loved about Eric, man, and I have to say this because it's just what I saw. Eric was a beast. He was a fighter. He was not afraid to get busy. That's what I love about him. Remember, if people don't know, if they have the footage on this, when they played against Grant Hill's team in the state title, the team from DC.
South Lakes, it was Northern Virginia, South Lakes.
The South Lake, yeah. Hampton was down. I think Hampton was down, or they was getting the best of Hampton. It was a classic moment in Crabber history. This one was 804. It wasn't even 757. It was 804. No, it wasn't even
757 yet. Yep.
It was 804, and he was backpedaling down the court, and I believe Grant Hill was bringing the ball up. Eric just stopped and slapped. It just slapped the court and it was like, let's go, and the whole crowd. It changed the complexity of the game. Grant Hill, at that point, he knew he was dealing with 2 things: Eric Hunter and Crabber pride. Nothing he could do about it because Eric went bananas in that game. Man, it was like, I remember it was the Ward game, and I believe it was a basketball game, and it got a little physical. But Eric will just toss people off of him. It was like he just got nasty on people. And I was like, yo, I love that about him.
Well, you're talking about he was a fighter. And it wasn't, I don't mean that in a sense.
Oh, no doubt. Doubt.
He got in, it was the infamous fight between Hampton and Ward at that time.
Yes, Lord.
For years, Hampton and Ward had a rivalry on the football field and the basketball court.
Yes.
And a fight broke out, and legend has it, if you weren't there, but I know because I'm a little bit older than you, and it's been confirmed. I played for Coach Brower and Coach Six and a lot of people. Eric basically took on the entire Ward basketball team.
He was knocking them out, lining them up.
And in regards to Grant Hill, legend has it, Coach Daniels, who was my shop teacher, and Coach Hamilton and other coaches told us as young men at Hampton High that Grant Hill, he basically locked them up and he essentially intimidated the entire South Lakes team. And it wasn't anything Bill Lamberish. It wasn't dirty. It was a mind state and mentality that Eric Hunter had that was infectious, where his teammates on both sports followed his lead. He was a natural leader. He was physical. And at that time, you did not see 6'5" guys walking around that were skill guys like him that
Yeah.
were that physical.
Yes.
That was so amazing because, you had tall guys. Grant Hill was 6'8", but Grant Hill's mentality, and again, this is a Hall of Famer. I love Grant Hill, but Grant Hill was not built like Eric Hunter, and I think that's what made it so amazing. I was once told by Melendez Byrd, who played against Hunter, standout linebacker for the Bethel Bruins, played in that same era, played against Hunter, and he was with him and Terry Kirby in the All-Star games, James Wilson, all those legendary players. And Melendez Byrd told me that Eric Hunter was a linebacker playing quarterback.
Oh, yeah. And you know where that comes from, man? And I'm going to put this out there. That comes from, when we talk about the 757, man, people don't know about Armstrong Elementary Field. They don't know about Wythe Elementary Field, Bassett, just Share Road in general. And then you got Sweetbriar and Brittany. You had Pine Chapel. You had, Lincoln Park. We come from a circumstance where it is really a do or die. So when you get that, you cannot coach heart. You cannot coach heart, will. You cannot coach those things. So we come from a prideful place. So, when you challenge us, we coming at you. You know what I'm saying? Because it becomes, mano a mano. We're going to do this. I'm going to get the best of you. So Eric he personified that. He gave that attitude, and I'm not going to back down. I'm going to take over. And that's what I love about him. He was relentless. He was, like Coach Mann would say, he was a beast. He was just a monster.
Yeah. No, so when you talk to his family, I want to go back to their thoughts with the documentary, just all the stuff you couldn't put on the air as far as just, because you can't put everything in the documentary. You never have enough footage to do everything. Do they have any thoughts in regards to his legacy as far as what did they say about watching him play, and what did they remember, and what were some of their favorite moments?
Oh, man. Like I said, Sister Felicia and Yvonne, man, they would go down there and watch him play at Purdue, and they was just saying how he would just command the attention of all the players on his team. He just took over. He had a nickname. They called him the General Electric. That was his nickname at Purdue. Because not only was he had a cannon for an arm, he can break out of that pocket. Now, he wasn't the most athletic guy as far as, compared to a Ronald Curry or someone of that nature as far as scrambling, but he knew how to get out of the pocket. And they gave him that nickname. And I actually posted the Michigan game he played in 90, I believe it was 92. And the commentators was going crazy about it because, Mike Allstott, future Hall of Fame NFL, running back, was his fullback. So they compared Eric Hunter's mentality, his killer instinct, with Mike Allstott. The way he would just, like Allstott would bust up that hole, Eric was the same way. He just had that mentality, and that, he was Dick Butkus with a quarterback helmet.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I've never said this on air, but I've said this to Damon Bacoat and Eric Brown and all my guys. I'm 6'5", 300 some plus. My legacy and who I am. And even back then, we were terrified of Eric Hunter. You had guys like Robert Banks, Eric Hunter, Aaron Monday, who just, when they walked in the gym, their presence was felt. And Eric Hunter, even when he came back to be one of our assistant coaches on the basketball team, we just used to stare at him because we just knew what he was capable of and what he had accomplished. He had an air about himself. And when you talk about the greats during that time, I've always said I felt like from 85 to the early 2000s in the Hampton Roads region, especially on the Peninsula side, that was the golden era of sports. Those years, those time frames, because if you look at it, you had Terry Kirby, Chris Slade over at Tab, you had Eric Hunter, James Wilson, and so many guys I can't even forget. I hope I can remember Tony Hyman, so many great players.
Yeah.
Then across the water, you had Aaron Sparrow. And you had
he was another
one at Wilson. So it's interesting. You obviously couldn't get Eric, because of what he was dealing with, to talk, but Did his family or has anyone ever talked about, or has Eric anything on record as far as Eric's thoughts of himself in comparison to Ronald Curry, Marcus Hagans, Tyrod Taylor, Aaron Sparrow, Aaron Brooks, Michael Vick? Did his family or did Eric ever mention anything?
Hey, as far as they concerned, Eric number one.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
There's no comparison. That and that's coming from them. We can speculate. Because sports is debatable.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sports is definitely debatable, but it, man. He's number one. Period.
Well, for me, it's all love. I don't really care for those debates because I think what happens is it takes away from the legacy. I know the ongoing debate now in the modern day era is, Michael Vick versus Ronald versus Iverson. And, it's going to go on and on and on. I think, when you saw the video I posted on social media the other day, it's gotten over 1,000 views and counting. And I posted that clip because they lost that state championship game, but Eric was at the 22 and he just flicked it and it went 50 yards and it hit Tony Hyman right in the hands.
Perfect.
And I think when you talk about multiple championships in both sports, and his presence and what he did to be a parade All-American, keep in mind he was a parade All-American in Hampton High before Hampton High, or as Hampton High was becoming Hampton High. I think you got to remember, including myself, when you play the program like Hampton High, you're benefiting from the Simon Gumptons, the Woodrow Wilsons, the Stefankos, the Derot Crooms. All those guys before us laid the foundation with all those multiple state championships and some national championships, regional championships. So recruiters know, hey, this program has done that. A lot has to do with because of what Eric Hunter and the guys, James Wilson, those guys did. Now, with that being said, you had quite a few guests turn out. I know you couldn't get everybody, but you still had some class acts, some big time players step up and be a part of your documentary, including Todd Kelly, correct? And who else?
Correct. Yes. Shout out to Todd Kelly, man, because he came through in the clutch. He didn't have to do it, but he just said nothing but great things about Eric. Great things.
So Todd, everyone hopefully will watch the documentary who had not seen it after we run this episode, and then we'll run the documentary, you and I both, so people can check it out if they hadn't seen it. But Todd Kelly and who else jumped on there?
See, we had Todd Kelly. He was a great Bethel legend, 757 legend. Leroy Keys, who was Leroy was the running back at Purdue in the I believe in the early 70s. And remind you now, Leroy Keys was second Heisman runner-up to O.J. Simpson.
Yeah. I finished second. I know. And Leroy Keys, when the Daily Press did their Daily Press 100, he was right there in the top with Ronald Curry. And many say, including Coach Adolph Hawkins, Ahmad Hawkins' dad, my father, many people say Leroy Keys is that dude before Ron C. So,
yes.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. What was, again, for those who haven't seen it, just paraphrase, let us know, what did Todd Kelly say about Eric Hunter? What was his impressions and what was his words?
Well, him and for the All-American, not the All-American game, but the Senior Bowl, him and Todd were roommates for the Senior Bowl. So, Todd, even before then, Todd was talking about his presence and just how much he meant so much on the field, how he would just take over. And what was crazy about that, this is the crazy thing about that game. Eric Hunter was the backup, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He came in, ended up being the MVP as the backup.
I remember that.
Now, on the documentary, and Todd Kelly confirmed this, Eric's cousin, Quan Woodley, said that Eric, they had a meeting with all the quarterbacks and everything. Whoever won the MVP was going to I think it was Hawaii or somewhere like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eric stood up in front of everybody and was like, "Yeah, y'all can go ahead and give it to me because I'm gonna win it." He went out there and he won it. You know what I'm saying?
So what's crazy about that story? Without spoiling a guest that will be on my show, I mentioned him earlier, Melendez Byrd. Eric Hunter was known for doing that because in the VHSL All-Star game with Terry Kirby and James Wilson and some of the best players you will ever know from the state of Virginia and the Tidewater area, Eric Hunter said, I'm getting MVP. And then y'all can do it by. Y'all might as well go ahead and call it a day. And he got it. And now the reason why that's impressive, you're talking about Kirby and some of the best athletes in the history of high school sports. Not just, oh yeah, that year. No, in the history. And he told them. So that was what Eric did. I think just to add to your point, and this I know from just talking to people in the game, again, I didn't play with Eric, as I mentioned before, but Eric was a smart black quarterback. And what I mean is the knock on African-American quarterbacks, you saw this in the Michael Vick documentary, and you've seen this over time with Steve McNair, Warren Moon, guys, especially the further you go back in time, if you were athletic or you were a black quarterback, they typically tried to move your position and make you play receiver, tight end, safety. Eric maintained that he was a quarterback. And the word is, as you mentioned, at the Senior Bowl, the reports, I went and looked this up, he was described as very intelligent and quick to pick up the offense.
And you know what? And getting on that real quick, because I'm glad you brought that up, because this needs to be talked about. I had to shout out Tyrod Taylor, because very well Tyrod could have changed position and been a wide receiver, kick return. We all know that. Athletic as they come, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he stuck to his guns. No, I'm a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect that about him. You know, same thing with Eric. You know, no, I'm not a tight end. I'm not a wide receiver. I am a quarterback. And get into the African-American situation, you know, it strikes a nerve in me, because I can't help but to believe that played a downfall as a whole, with him being an African-American quarterback going to a predominantly, if you will, white university, and him coming in there as an African-American and shutting everybody down as a freshman and remain the quarterback. Some people don't like that. You know, it's that underlying, like you said, like they've been saying, you're not intelligent enough, you're not articulate enough, you're not lead, you know, you don't have the leadership qualities. You know, your kind run fast and jump high. You know, you don't have the intellect, the IQ to run a college team on that level, let alone an NFL level. You know, so when Eric went out there and did his thing, that was letting them know, hey, I'm coming. You know, and the Randall Cunninghams and Warren Moons before him, you know, did the same thing. Like, no, I'm a quarterback, and that's what I'm going to play. And Eric had that mentality. You know, I'm going to play quarterback, and that's what he did. And unfortunately, when Fred Akers, who recruited Eric, was the head coach, everything was running smooth. But Jim Coletto comes in and tries to make Eric a quarterback that he wasn't. He wanted him to run a certain type of way, do a certain type of thing, and it was, you know, it was friction, known friction between them two. And I believe that, you know, going back to that good old boy system, you know, we want you to play this way, but no, my skills to play this way, and ultimately, you know, it always becomes a issue way too often.
It is. And so let everybody know, take us back, if you do know, I'm sure you're aware, what happened after that standout performance in the Senior Bowl. Was he drafted? What free agent? What happened with Eric after that? Because the reports is that there were teams interested, but again, as we both mentioned, Black quarterbacks were not frequently chosen like they are now in the draft. You have Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, and so many, you know. But what happened with Eric? What happened with his pro career after that?
Okay, well, this is all public information as well. So it's nothing I'm not saying new. A lot of speculations, and you know, you asked me the question, so I gotta be very honest with you. There were rumors that Eric just and Todd Kelly talks about this in the documentary, that he just snapped. Now, it was speculation. There's also public information that he went into a dorm room, bearing a knife, saying that he was on a mission from God. You know, just these type of things happen. He ended up getting sent to psychiatric hospital in Indiana. I forgot the name of it. And from that point, he tried to escape, which he actually did. And they caught up to him and sent him back home, to Virginia. The big gap, and I have to be very honest with you, when I heard about that story years, because honestly, when I first started hearing about Eric's situation, that's a story I always heard, was that story of what took place. And it kind of makes you want to get back to the African American situation. It's like, man, was it that type of jealousy where somebody intentionally tried to drug him or do something to him? Because it's like, now you come in and be the MVP. We can't let this happen, because it's too close. You know what I mean? It's like something took place behind the scenes to where somebody didn't want that to happen. And I talked to his family about this on the document. I think I was off camera. Besides the trauma of concussions, could there be a conspiracy theory behind that? And him being an African-American quarterback, we know what happened his freshman year. You watch a documentary, you know what happened his freshman year. That didn't work for the system. So now he's still successful. That didn't break him. So now it's like, okay, he's really on his way to the NFL. And I believe, I'm not mistaken, the Raiders was really interested in him. Now, all of a sudden, you losing your mind and you can't, that just didn't sit well. And after that, I believe he got back into his rhythm. He went to Canada to play over in Canada, but he just wasn't feeling it. He wasn't feeling it, and he came back home. Honestly, in my personal opinion, Eric should have stayed in Canada.
Of course.
And because look at Doug Flutie. You know what I'm saying? Herschel Walker's.
Yeah. Or Warren Moon when he was in the USFL.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? But once again, when you NFL bound, you've been told you're going to the league, you done call home and told your mom, find a home. I'm pretty much, mama, I made it. I'm going to take care of the family. Now, all of a sudden, you get it wiped from under you. That's devastating. That is to anybody.
No, it is. And I think I heard that same thing about the knife. And for those watching, I am a LPC. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I provide mental health services, individual, family, outpatient therapy, in addition to the other things I do with podcasts. But I do this for a living. I've been working in the mental health and social service field for 20 plus years. And we even did an interview with Lori Mans, who's an LPC down in Richmond, who has her own practice. And we discussed trauma. Trauma is very real in the African-American community. And you throw in concussions and you throw in exposure to trauma. It has an effect. I lost a Hamptonian. He was a Hampton Crabber, a close friend of mine who was very well known. And he had bipolar mood disorder. And he had similar manic episodes, irrational thoughts and things of that nature. It can affect you at different times. It can be triggered. It snapped, as Todd Kelly mentioned, and you just stated, it happens. I think the reality of it is, especially back then, you don't have the same resources and team of people, because there are other people now that are in the NFL and the NBA who have mental health issues. The resources and awareness now is much more fluid. It's more available. There's sports psychologists on most college and NFL teams. They are better at keeping stuff under wraps, as far as letting stuff leak unless they want it to leak. Who really knows the story? I do want to mention that, nothing happened. And correct me if I'm wrong, Eric was exonerated. There were no charges or anything like that, correct?
Yeah, exactly. No charges.
But it's funny, though, because that story lingered for decades.
Now, which one? The freshman year or the senior year?
The freshman year.
Oh, man,
Not the senior year. The senior year is not that well known. The freshman year one lingered even while he was playing.
And you know what's crazy about that? And we all know to this day, because we still see it, especially among Black athletes. Once you get that title, there's no coming from it. There's no way to shake it. And once again, this goes back to history. Unfortunately, in the African American community, what's one way to lock a black man down? Hit him with that rape charge. Because once we put that above his head, we already know everybody else is going to back off. It's going to back away. And the fact that he was, exonerated, was never charged, but they made an issue. They put it in the paper. So now it's going to stick regardless of where he went. You know what I mean? It's going to stick on him. But like the great human being that he is and the circumstances he came from, he overcame that and he still went out there and did his thing. And the one thing I want to point out,
go ahead.
Even though he wasn't on the documentary, and I really wish he would have been, but just things didn't work out that way. Mike Smith said something that was very profound about Eric. He said, Eric was not that type of young man to go out and cause trouble.
No.
And I saluted Coach Smith for that. And, what Eric's family did say off camera is Mike Smith would definitely call up to Purdue and talk to them and ask them what was going on with Eric. When certain things would go down, they'd be like, why are you not playing, Eric, or what's going on? Because he really did care. And I wanted everybody to know that Mike Smith wasn't on the documentary, but hopefully in the follow-up he will be. He talked very highly of Eric, and I commend Coach Smith for that because, I know our era from the 70s on up to now, Hampton has been predominantly an African-American school.
Yep. And
Smith is not African-American, but for him to speak up for African-American player, that's honorable because I can only imagine what he probably took, the slack he probably took from other people. You know what I mean? But he stepped up and did the right thing and spoke well to Eric, and I respect him for that. So salute to Coach Smith.
Speaking of that, man, shout out to my coach, Coach Smith, my guy. How was Eric perceived and not perceived, pardon me. How was he with his family? Because again, I was not at the funeral. I don't know his family. I know of them. I know, in Hampton, it's but so big, but you had the privilege of interacting with them, interviewing them. Was Eric a loving brother? Was it a close-knit family? Because again, he didn't have the same attention that we know that Iverson and, Tyrod Taylor was covered by the NFL Network when he was in high school.
Yeah.
So again, that's because of the guys before him and because Tyrod was a great player, but the resources and media just wasn't like it is now back in the day. So we don't know unless, you're close or you do something like you did with the family situation. But talk about Eric's personal relationships. Did he leave behind children? How was his family? What did they describe him as? Tell us about Eric the person.
Yeah, Eric didn't have any children, but his sister Yvonne, sister Felicia, was real close to Eric. Even up to his death. He's a family person. He would be at the house all the time. You know what I mean? And fun-loving, nice guy, wouldn't harm anybody. You know what I mean? And for the things he got in trouble for, it was petty stuff, trespassing. Some stuff like that. Nothing crazy. You know what I mean? His cousin Quan Willie, who was on the documentary, him and Quan was real tight. You know what I mean? Muhammad Carlos, shout out to Muhammad Carlos. He was real close with Eric. And I honor and I respect Muhammad because he would come and help Eric and pick Eric up and, do things with Eric to show that love. You know what I mean? So he wouldn't fall by the wayside. You know what I mean? And Eric was a fun-loving guy, man. Funny, and very protective. You know what I'm saying? Even Eric was no pushover. And everybody knew Eric. Eric, hey, just act the Warrior basketball team. Eric would line them up and knock them down for real. Jabs all day. You know what I mean? And very protective of his sisters, nieces, nephews. He loved them to death. And they loved him to death. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, when you have some type of situations, it ain't but so much anybody can do. Sometimes it really boils down to just you and whatever you're facing, you have to face that. Unfortunately, like you saying, nowadays in the NFL, they got all kinds of sports analysts, mental health, this and all, everybody to help you. But Eric just didn't have that. You know what I mean? And sometimes, unfortunately, medication is not enough.
No. Again, I do this for a living. It's not.
It's not. It's You know, and my man, big up, shout out to Harrell. Harrell was one of, he was on the documentary as well. He was one of Eric's counselors. And, you know, he told the story how Eric told him what had happened with him and the young lady his freshman year and how that bothered him. You know what I mean? And, you know, those things, man, you know, you can never get past that. You know, and
It bothered Eric, just so we clear, the allegation of rape that bothered Eric,
yeah,
right? But he was clear
exactly.
there was no rape charges, and he was clear.
Exactly. There was no rape charge.
But it bothered Eric, right? Is that what you're saying?
Extremely, yeah. And his family, you know, Felicia and Yvonne, they talked about that. You know, how that really bothered him. You know what I mean? That can weigh on anybody's mind, you know, and once it goes from the mind to the heart, and when it goes from the mind to the heart to the soul, it becomes a part of you. You know what I mean? Those worriations, those concerns become a part of your everyday life. And sometimes people just can't, it's too easy to say, get over it, or it's going to be okay, because it's not okay. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You just can't get over that. That's like you're dying, but still living at the same time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's what Eric, you know, unfortunately, that's where it came down to. Eric was dying yet living at the same time because of his conditions and everything that he was dealing with after college.
Did his family talk about, or do they mention in the documentary, or are you aware of anyone else after everything went down? Not his freshman. I'm talking about after he came back home and was trying to find himself and struggling to maintain. Did other people come around and try to help? Or you mentioned in the beginning of this show that you felt that he was abandoned.
Man, I'm gonna be 100 with you. The only person besides his family that they really talked about, and no disrespect to anybody if I leave anybody out, but Muhammad Carlos was, from what they told me, was the guy who really tried to help Eric out. And there was other people, I'm sure. The Rock Kroom was one of them. Who you know, tried to, you know, help out the best he could. You know, but when I say abandoned, I'm speaking from the African American community as a whole. And when it comes to our family members as a whole, we tend to, if it's not something that we see we can fix, and it's like we start to make excuses for that person. Like, they should have did this differently. They should have did that differently. That's, you know, God got to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? But love conquers all. You know what I mean? And there was times when I would see Eric, you know, and I just couldn't, I'd be heartbroken. Because I just couldn't, you know, Eric was the example of what you was taught by your parents and your teachers and your elders what not to turn out like. And for you to see it firsthand, for him to have the whole world in his hand, and then for the universe to turn their back on him, that's unbearable. You know, and I believe Eric within died from a broken heart. You know, I just believe that all the people who was rooting for him and they knew he was gonna make it to the league, once all that left, and they was like, oh, that there go our payday, or, you know, there go our free tickets, or whatever it is, there go our party time. It's not going to be that. Then we tend to back away as if we never cared.
Yeah. Well, what you're describing is a harsh reality that exists. It has been existing for decades and exists in the Black community for a variety of reasons. Again, I'm speaking on this professionally and personally, you know, because of what I've been doing the last 25 years. Essentially with mental health, Matt, is that at the end of the day, it makes people uncomfortable. You know, in the African and even in the Hispanic community, we tend to self-medicate, hide, or avoid the truth. From depression to anxiety to even ADHD and bipolar and schizophrenia, mental health is something that is someone else's problem. And then when it becomes your sibling's problem or your close friend, a lot of people don't have the capability or the strength to deal with it. And we either make excuses or we just pretty much leave the person out. And again, there's other reasons. I can't speak for every family. It's good to hear that Eric's family still had his back and were there for him. you know, it's I know it. You've said it. His sisters, his family. But I think when you mentioned like the Hampton and Newport News communities that were aware of what was going on, I know Coach Brower definitely gave him the job because he helped coach me that year and a year after. But I think it's just one of those things where a lot of people don't know what to do. That's why, you know, to be honest with you, I'm actually going to do a follow-up on mental health with my guy Mod Hawkins, because it's come up, and even on my legacy spotlights with a lot of former athletes, because I think what happens is we grow these young men up to think you can only be an Eric Hunter and you can only be a Gerard Kroon or a Tim Johnson or an Allen Iverson or a Tyrod Taylor, when we need to start letting them know that that's part of the journey and that they can be more than an athlete. And I think what happens is we bottle their thoughts in, and then they think, okay, well, who am I besides this great quarterback? Who am I besides this great receiver or coach? And then they find themselves stuck. Then you throw in depression, you know, mood disorder, whatever it may be. People tend to then self-medicate, whether it's amphetamines, crack, ecstasy, anxiety pills, ADHD medication, over-the-counters, whatever it is, even Xanax. We look for peace of mind. I know from doing years of work, peace of mind is something everybody strives for, but everyone can't get, especially when their mind is not right, and especially if their identity is lost. So, you know, just reading and doing the research and prep and even reflecting on his life, his legacy, and even watching your documentary, it's tough, man, because I agree with you. The community did fall short, but at the same time, I think it starts way before he becomes a parade All-American. I think it starts in youth ball. I think it starts when you're 9 years old, or you're at Lindsay Middle School, or you're growing up in the old Pond Chapel, because you and I both are from Shell Road. So we both, even though I'm older than you, we both saw kids and friends and peers of ours who struggled with mental illness, or they even had issues with literacy or basic life skills. But if they could run, jump, and they can dunk or do whatever, we pacify those issues, but they're still there. You know, and does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. You know, to digress for a little bit, to get back to why I did the documentary, because I have to include myself in that for real quick. For those who don't know, I was a special education student from 6th to 12th grade. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I went through the system. Okay, so to get even a little deeper, I was on the Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, Ritalin, all these different medications, right?
Psychotropic medications.
Exactly. At the age of 12, and October 31st, 1994, I was placed in a psychiatric hospital for nearly 3 months at 12 years old. My roommate, who was in there with me, is now doing 43 years in prison plus 4 life sentences. Whew. Okay, somebody I know personally. This guy, you know, he was my cellmate. I have seen kids at 11, 12 years old try cutting themselves. I've seen this with my own eyes. Fortunately, by the grace of God, I believed in myself. I knew that God don't make mistakes. I had a strong family behind me. You know, the church was behind me. And don't get me wrong, because when I say church, it's not me or you perfect. It's just, when I say church, I mean community. So the community was behind me. Mm-hmm. So that's what gives me so much passion, because I overcame all those issues. Mm-hmm. You know, and being in special education, you know, and you go from being in regular classes from kindergarten all the way through 5th grade and mostly 6th grade. Now you get put in this classroom. That's very detrimental to me. But at the same time, I found my passion. You know what I mean? Without pain, there's no passion, because there's no pleasure to give your pain back to the people. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that's why I have such a heart to give back, because I went through it. I understand what it means when somebody says they're on medication, or they're bipolar or schizophrenic or psycho, you know, all these other things. I can't tell you how many psychologists I had to see in high school. And nobody knew about this. Mm-hmm. Now, people do out the special education. They knew that. But thank God, because I had a lot of respect. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Ain't nobody try me. It wasn't one of those like, oh, Matt has a learning disability. I wasn't in there for that. You know what I'm saying? Mine was emotional. Mm-hmm. Mine wasn't learning. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't have to deal with bullies and none of that other stuff. You know what I mean? But it psychologically, it played on me extremely heavy, which affected me playing ball in high school and things like that. So, you know, when I see someone like Eric or anybody in that situation, I have a passion to help them because I know what I went through. You know, so to do this podcast and not for me to talk about myself would be selfish, because one has to ask themselves, why are you so passionate about doing this? Like, what happened in your life? You know what I'm saying? And I used to be embarrassed. Dwight. You know, we come from Shell Road, man. You talk about you was in a psychiatric hospital or you was special education. People got, you know what I'm saying? Like that your ego kicks in.
But guess what? This is speaking again from professional experience and personal experience. Many people that went to Hampton, Phoebus, Bethel, Wilson, Norcom, Indian River, Western Branch, whatever school you want to pick, whatever side of the water, whatever city, many people are affected, whether it's within their family unit or individually. They just don't disclose. And many people walk around undiagnosed. And the next step, and I've been asked this on radio and TV and in trainings as a clinician, the next step is for the community, specifically our communities, our race, is to acknowledge it and to stop hiding. We have to acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge it happens and it's okay, and you can have a productive and functioning life and just treat it accordingly. The same way we treat sickle cell, asthma, diabetes, ear infections, and the flu. You have to treat it. We just don't know how to deal with it. And this goes on for decades. And I appreciate and respect you for speaking out about it because it needs to be said. And Eric Hunter's issue was not taboo. And I'm sure, even though Todd Kelly mentioned he snapped and there was the incidents where, his family knows that I may never know and the public may never know, at least he had that support system. What tends to happen is there's signs even prior to from coaches, administrators, and teachers. And I'm not trying to blame Hampton High. I love being a Crabber, but there are warning signs. I'm sure Purdue, I was a college athlete too. I played at Virginia Tech. I was at Virginia Tech 5 years. I had teammates that went to rehab for alcoholism. I had teammates that had issues, learning disabilities. They found out they were dyslexic. So again, I know that was the 80s with Eric, but when someone is off and may need in addition more attention. But I will say that time frame, mental health was even more taboo, and I'm sure, he was so dynamic on the field, they felt like, that's intensity, or, that's just him playing. And unfortunately, man, it ultimately, the labels itself cost him his career. And that's the sad part of his legacy. But at the same time, my goal, and I know it's yours with these documentaries you're about to do, another one and the one you've done, is to speak out about it and let his legacy be an example of how we can learn from it and move forward, correct?
Yeah, definitely. You can't, and I have to be very honest. It took me probably my mid-20s for me to even acknowledge the fact that I was in special education. Because I didn't want people to ask me questions that if I give them an answer why I was in there, they wouldn't understand it. And you know what I'm saying? So, and being, 12 years old, you're in a psychiatric hospital because I had an extremely bad temper. I admit I had a very, very, very bad temper at 12 years old. But I'm in there with kids, Dwight, man, I'm telling you, man, I'm in there with kids, bruh. These kids really had issues. And I was like, I was the oddball to be, having a bad temper was nothing compared to kids that will pick up TVs and throw them. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like I was in there with young women who were molested when they were kids, young boys who was molested. I was in there with girls who was addicted to sex at 11 years old because that was their outlet to deal with what happened to them. This is real. I seen this with my own eyes. You know what I mean? I was in there for 3 months. You know what I mean? You got bars on your window. You know what I mean? Everything is a count. You got time to wake up, time to eat lunch, time to eat dinner, time to go to bed. You know what I'm saying? I was, and that's like a small jail, pretty much what it was, but just psychiatric at 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a choice. I said, okay, Matthew, you know where you come from. Either you're going to believe this and never get past this, or you're not going to believe it, find your passion and pass it. And it would be a disservice for me as a human being for me to go through all that, and by the grace of God, make it out in my right mind. I'm a married man with 3 daughters. You know what I'm saying? On my own home, we do pretty good. For me not to give back. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to stress this to everybody watching this podcast, man. Listen, when you go through something and God allows you to come out of it, it's for you to give back to somebody else. How dare I go through all that situation, see somebody like Eric and not extend my help? You know what I'm saying? Who am I? You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't be doing my due diligence to just say, oh, well, that's another one. He's gonna be somebody else. Eventually, and true enough, it will be. But unfortunately, for me to go through them situations, man, and for me to come out of that, you know what I'm saying, and for me to be able to talk about it freely, it's because I have to. You know what I'm saying? I can't be embarrassed by it because it wasn't a lot of stuff that happened wasn't my fault. I'm a 12-year-old kid. You know what I mean? A lot of paperwork that got signed wasn't me. If I had a choice, would I want to be in there? No. You know what I'm saying? No. But I had no choice. And going through special education, man, that was worse than anything, man, because people looking at you like, why Matt in that class? I know Matt ain't slow or whatever it is. And people have enough respect, you know what I'm saying, not to approach you about it. But at the same time, it killed me within, man. I remember going home every day crying for like 3 years straight. You know what I mean? Because I was upset and embarrassed. You know what I'm saying? It made me embarrassed and upset because I couldn't participate in intramurals. You know what I mean? Every time we have a function in the auditorium, for whatever reason, our class was like the last class to walk in, so everybody's looking at you. Man, my anger and my temper went from horrible to extremely horrible just because I had to bottle all that within. You know what I mean? Dealing with psychiatrists every day, after school, medications. It was a lot to deal with, in my adolescent years.
And you're right. And one thing we didn't mention is no matter what decade, especially back then, and even when you and I were growing up, Hampton and Newport News, with the exception of a few spots like Todd Mills and Farmington, is not a place you want to be at. Like, we love Hampton, but still, so with you, me, and Eric Hunter and everybody else growing up, we know, and it's still that way. It's even worse now because it wasn't even about guns, but trauma and traumatic events. You probably saw my post, and I joked about, Anne Fran Fest and the carnival and Bay Day.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, you talk about all the things you were dealing with internally, but externally around us, from Shell Road to Wickham Avenue to different neighborhoods, Rip Rap Road, it's not like we are in the suburbs. We are,
man, and you know what?
So that plays a part, not just with you, myself, but Eric Hunter and Allen Iverson and a lot of us. We understood where you could go and when not to go. And keep in mind, we also are in the southeastern part of the state where Gloucester is around, Poquoson is around, Williamsburg is around. So you talk about racial, social injustice still occurring like it is now in 2020. Then now you're talking about the stigmas attached with mental health and special education. You're dealing with that. Poverty, you're dealing with that. You're dealing with trying to be a good person, the peer pressure because drug selling is becoming popular in the 80s and 90s. And you're just trying to make it to Monday. You're trying to make it to Wednesday. And that's the challenges that you and I and Eric Hunter were facing. And sometimes it's bigger than football and basketball and track and tennis.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember, man, funny, because I remember, growing up, man, and, growing up on the system, the Section 8, you know what I'm saying? Thank God. When we first met, we lived on New Street. Y'all lived on Vaughn.
Yep.
But that was like 86, 87 era, whatever. 89, we moved to the other end of Shell Roads on Glendale, which is like the middle, with my grandmother for like 8 years. So, and just growing up on Glendale, hey, you had to be down for the get down because it was like that. You know what I'm saying? I remember W&W, you know, people don't know, before it was Roy's Quick Stop, no, it was W&W from our era, it was W&W. Going up to that store, you got like 80 dudes on the block, 900 guns, 3,000 bullets, and it can go down at any time, and it went down. And it still goes down. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it gave you a sense of pride. You know what I mean? Yeah. It might sound wrong, but it's like, yo, for Shell Road, like, what's up? No. And that was like that. And I remember, you know how it was back in the 80s. If you ever got sick, if you had to go to the hospital, you prayed to God that you went to Centero or Victoria. But if you had to go over there to Newport News, but Woodson, when Woodson was around, that was a whole nother animal. Woodson was about that. Woodson, Chestnut, Marshall Court.
I lived in Woodson.
Man, you gotta be from that era to understand the Woodson posse, the Shell Road Blood Blocks, Stevens Raiders, Pine Chapel Dogs. That was real. You know what I'm saying? So, but like you said, Iverson know about that. Vic knows about that. You know what I'm saying? Eric grew up in Brittany and Sweetbriar. Brittany and Sweetbriar got busy too. You know what I'm saying? So it was like Pine Chapel. You know what I'm saying? So it was like growing up and all that does something to you mentally because you already struggling at home. Sometimes you come home, the lights is off. You know what I'm saying? Ain't enough food in the refrigerator. Your mom get food stamps, but that only gonna last for the first 15 days of the month. What about the last 15 days of the month? You know what I'm saying? But, you know, and we all went through that. Nobody growing up, man, it was about a good, from Glendale, Dare, Millville, the whole Shell period. I had about 70 friends, man, that had no fathers in the household, literally.
Yeah, no, I understand. No, I'm from the same state, so I know. So look, man, I want to have a few more questions, man, because I want to really finish up with this. You do have the new document that you're already starting to work on to get more people to speak about Eric's legacy and the importance of mental health. But definitely, I want to talk about just a few more questions and we'll be done. But I want to know, let people know about all the work you've been doing to honor Eric. That, you know, you sent me a lot of the emails without getting into the red tape and some of the stuff you can't speak on. Because it's in the works, so you're waiting to get approval. So I don't want to damage that, but just some of the things, just so people know how diligently you've been working to try to honor Eric, including getting a street named after him. Go ahead and let people know that's watching this. What have you been doing?
Man, well, you seen the letters I wrote to ESPN, 30 for 30. The HBO, I wrote them, emailed them. The guys who actually did Iverson's documentary, I reached out to those guys who reached back and said, you know, it was a great idea. They just didn't have the capacity for it. You know, and that's one thing I'm glad that you mentioned, man, because I want people to understand, and this is what I want his family, because I ain't gonna lie to you, man, his sisters was real protective, as they should be. You know, so when Eric passed away, and I tried to get in contact with his sister Felicia, she was reluctant, and that was respectfully, I understand. The first question she had is, what do you want to know about my brother? And I had to show her to try to ease the tension. Like, I'm not trying to get a story because he's passed away. This is what I've been doing when he was still living. You know what I mean? If you go on my Facebook page, you got to scroll down some time. But 2012, 2013, I was giving up to Eric on my Facebook page, like the greatest quarterback ever. I never said the greatest athlete, but I said the greatest quarterback, and I stand on that. But you know what I mean? So it wasn't like I just, he's dead now, let's do this documentary. No, I reached out to Netflix. I reached out so many other major platforms, you know, the legend, you know, some political people. You know what I mean by that? And, you know, unfortunately, none of those things worked out so far, but nonetheless, I'm gonna keep pressing because I want to get the Eric Hunter Foundation for Mental Health. I want to start an Eric Hunter Foundation for Mental Health. I reached out to Spike Lee, to his 40 Acres and a Mule, to his film company. Hey, this is a great storyline. This is a great story to be told. I mean, it took remember the Titans? That happened in 71. The movie didn't come out until 2000.
I know people think Remember the Titans, the TC Williams teams I post about. And I'm like, nah, man, remember the Titans happened in the 70s, man.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? But look how long it took.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Eric, leaving Hampton in 89, started at Purdue in 89, it's 30 years ago. I'm about to be 31 years. It's like, by the grace of God, man, I really want for this documentary to get on a platform such as Netflix, turn into a movie, because it needs to be talked about. You know what I mean? And like I tell everybody, Iverson, by the grace of God, he's still here. Tyrod still here. Ron's still here. Aaron Brooks still here. They've all gotten their flowers. Let's give Eric his flowers. Though he's passed away, his garden still grows. You know what I mean? And I'm sure his family is and which they did tell me, his sisters, his aunts, his cousins was like, we thank you for doing this. And I think one thing that really concerned them is they wanted to know why. They really wanted to know, like, why my brother? You know what I'm saying? Because unfortunately, they've gotten so many negative feedback about stuff. So it's like, why would you want to say anything positive about my brother?
Because he deserves it.
Exactly. What do you have to say great about my brother? And over time, they gained my trust, and they saw that I was real serious. And some things we can't talk about up here, but you saw the email that I sent you about that situation. So you see the direction I'm trying to go in. That's what I want people to understand. Like, I've sent so many emails, wrote so many letters, tried to contact so many people, because he really deserves this, and I'm really passionate about helping him. And I want to help anybody that I can, to be honest with you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? I share your passion, and I appreciate you doing it. And since you reached out to me several years ago when you started this journey on just trying to honor Eric Hunter, I've joined you in that. I've always been a big fan. I mean, I looked up to him. To me, I looked up to him the same way I looked up to Sean Hamlet and James Wilson and Todd Kelly and, even Terry Kirby, who I was a big fan of, who went on to do great things in UVA and in the NFL. He's been on the Vicktory Life Legacy Spotlight.
Exactly.
So, I think it's great. And I'm glad people are going to be able to see this. And you never know what this may lead to. And I know you're going to keep diligently working, trying to get that out there.
No doubt.
That being said, we come to the end of our show where I let my guests give their final thoughts. You've been very open and vulnerable with your emotions and your journey as a man and why you've chosen to honor Eric, and also talk about your struggles and resiliency and issues you've overcome, Matt. With that being said, share your final thoughts on what the documentary Eric Hunter, his legacy has taught you, and also what you learned about yourself in doing that.
Okay, well, what I learned from Eric is, one, nobody's invincible. Anybody can be touched. Any young person, male, female, watching this, especially athletes, if you're going through some things within yourself, I understand the embarrassment. I understand the ego side of it. Find someone that you trust, that you can talk to about what's going on within yourself. Don't let it get to a point where you become codependent on things that will eventually destroy your life, drugs, alcohol. Find somebody that you trust, talk to them, and get help. There's nothing wrong with sitting down, talking to someone about your issues. Matter of fact, you need to. That's the most gangsterest thing, since that's a huge word. That's the most gangsterest thing, is taking care of yourself. All right? Take care of yourself. And as far as me, hey, I was on 4 different medications at one time: Paxil, Prozac, Zoloft, and Ritalin. You can look these medications up. I was in a psychiatric hospital at 12 years old for 3 months. I was in a special education program for 6 years. I overcame all of that. Why? Because I simply believed in myself. I believe in my gift. I believe that I went through what I went through to help other people, not to judge anyone, any of those. And when you see this podcast, whoever's watching it, if you're going through something, inbox me. You can talk to me. I don't care who you are. If I know you, if I don't know you. It's straight confidential, Holler at me. I'm not a psychiatrist of any kind. I don't have no doctorate, no master's, none of that. But talk to me. I'll be more than happy to help, any way that I can. Whoever else sees this podcast, hey man, shout out to Dwight for doing it. He didn't have to do it. It's very unselfish of him. He has a huge platform and it's growing. He took time out to do this. He didn't have to do it. He could have been like, nah, whatever. This is about people who's actually doing something now. You know what I'm saying? But nah, he took the time out to do it, and I respect him for that. Definitely.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you for staying on me and getting this done. And I want to thank you for honoring Eric, and I want to encourage you to continue to do that. To his family, when you watch this, thank you for supporting Eric, and I'm sorry for the tragic loss of Eric, but we will honor his legacy with this legacy spotlight, as well as with things yet to come. I'll be continuing to pray and honor him with videos and interviews like this. And other people who are struggling, as Matthew said, please seek out help. There's 1-800 numbers, there's websites, there's links. Never feel like you're alone or abandoned. And Matthew, I just appreciate you for your kind words, your insight, and being open and vulnerable, and also honoring Eric on behalf of many people, especially Vicktory Life. We appreciate you, and I can't wait for what's yet to come. I do think a street should be named after him. I do think he should be honored, and he's one of many that need to keep their roses, whether while they're here or they're no longer in the physical. But this has been great. This has been encouraging. This has been insightful. Excuse me. So, with that being said, like I say every episode, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, make sure you leave a positive impact and a great legacy. Thank you, Matthew.
Appreciate it, Vic. Thank you, man. Be easy.